I sold my business for $60 million and decided to celebrate with my daughter and her husband. We ate at the most extravagant restaurant in the city. When I stepped out to answer a call, a waiter pulled me aside and said, "Your daughter just put something in your glass." So I went back and switched our drinks. 15 minutes later. Imagine celebrating the biggest win of your life, a $60 million payday after 40 years of brutal work, only to have your own daughter try to drug you at the dinner table. And then, 15 minutes after I swapped our glasses, I watched her collapse, twitching right in front of me. What the hell happened next? Because that night, I didn't just sell my company, I declared war on my own family. Pause. My name is Peter Shaw. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've been a widower. That $60 million wasn't just some number to me. It was the culmination of everything, 40 years of my life, starting in a rented garage in Palo Alto with 2 employees and a wild dream. But despite all that success, I never changed. I still live in the same 3-bedroom ranch house my late wife, Laura, and I bought decades ago. I still drive a beat-up, 7-year-old sedan. Laura, she was the smart one. She saw the world with a clarity I often lacked. And she never, not once, truly trusted Ryan. Voice softens, a hint of regret. "He only looks at your checkbook, Peter," she'd warned me, her voice always gentle but so firm. "He doesn't see Emily. He sees a safety net." I always laughed it off, you know? "He loves her, Laura. He's just ambitious." How wrong I was. So incredibly wrong. Laura's been gone for 3 years now, and her words, they echo in my head every single time I see him. Emily and Ryan, they live a life I simply don't understand. They drive these leased luxury cars that cost more per month than my mortgage ever did. They talk about clubs I've never heard of and vacations in places I've only seen in glossy magazines. Ryan claims he has some vague import-export business, but I'm a numbers man. I know a house of cards when I see it. I'd even seen the debt letters, accidentally delivered to my house. My daughter, my Emily, she changed after Laura died. She grew, distant, defensive, as if she were protecting him from me. But then, 6 months ago, when the news of the Apex Biodyne acquisition started leaking into the financial papers, they were suddenly present. "Dad, let us help you with your files. You shouldn't be handling all this paperwork alone. Dad, are you sure your investments are set up correctly for the transition? Ryan knows so much about this." A small, bitter laugh. I was so lonely, so desperate for that connection I'd lost, that I welcomed their sudden interest. I mistook their greed for affection. And that night at L'Orangerie, that affection was suffocating. The restaurant was a palace of crystal and white linen. We were at the best table, overlooking the city lights. "Dad, you're a legend," Ryan said, raising his glass of $20 water. "To you, the man who built it all from nothing." Emily chimed in, her smile blinding. "We're just so proud of you, Daddy." But their eyes, oh God, their eyes weren't proud. They were hungry. They were looking at me like I was a winning lottery ticket. And they were finally ready to cash it in. "So, Dad," Ryan said, leaning in with that familiar, oily charm. "With the company officially sold, what happens to all that infrastructure? The shipping routes, all those climate-controlled containers?" It was a strange question. "I'm in biotechnology. We ship sensitive, heavily regulated medical compounds. It's not like shipping sneakers. It's all part of the acquisition, Ryan," I said slowly. "The new corporation takes over all assets." "Why?" He just shrugged, taking a sip of his wine. "Just curious. Seems like a waste of good logistics." That's when my phone vibrated. The caller ID said, "Banca Swiss." The final confirmation. I excused myself. "I have to take this." As I walked away, I saw Ryan and Emily exchange a look I couldn't decipher. A look of anticipation. I walked out into the grand marble lobby. The call was brief, professional, and life-changing. "Mr. Shaw, we can confirm the $60 million has cleared." "Congratulations, sir." I hung up. I felt the weight of 40 years lift off my shoulders. I was free. I could retire. I could finally travel. I turned around, and that's when I saw the young waiter. He was young, maybe 24. His uniform was immaculate, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his empty tray. "Mr. Shaw," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "My name is Evan." "I'm sorry to bother you, sir. I'm new here, but I have to tell you something. I am a man who has run a multi-million-dollar company. I have faced hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, and shareholder revolts. I can read people." This kid wasn't lying. He was terrified. "What is it, Evan?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Sir, I was refilling water at the service station right behind your table." "Your son-in-law?" He pointed to that large painting on the far wall. "He asked your daughter a loud question about the artist." It was strange. It felt staged, like he was making sure you were looking away. My blood turned to ice. My breath caught in my throat. "Go on," I said. "The moment you both looked away, your daughter, she was fast, sir. Really fast." She took a small brown glass vial from her purse. She unscrewed the cap, and she dumped a fine white powder into your wine glass. Then she swirled it, just once, and put the vial back in her purse. It took 2 seconds, maybe 3. A white powder, not a liquid, designed to dissolve. My mind raced. What was it? A poison to kill me here, in a crowded restaurant, with witnesses? That's messy. That's traceable. This was something else. Something clinical. I looked Evan straight in the eye. His own were wide with fear. Are you absolutely certain you saw this? He swallowed hard, nodding. Yes, sir. 100%. I saw the vial. She hid it in her napkin right after. But I saw her put it in her purse when you stood up to take your phone call just now. That's why I had to stop you. This kid had just handed me my life. I reached into my wallet. I pulled out a stack of bills. That's $500, Evan, I said, placing the money in his hand. His eyes widened. You didn't see anything. You will finish your shift. You will go home. You will never speak of this to anyone. But you just saved my life. If you are ever in trouble, or if you ever need a job, you call this number. I handed him my personal card. The one that doesn't say CEO on it. Sir, I can't dash. You can, I said, my voice firm. And thank you. He vanished. I stood alone in the lobby for 10 seconds. The rage was a physical thing, a hot iron in my gut. My own daughter. My Emily. My little girl. But the rage wasn't in control. I was. The CEO was. I smoothed my suit jacket. I composed my face into a mask of mild distraction. I took a deep breath and I walked back to the table. I sat down. The smell of the expensive food, the truffle oil, the seared scallops, it suddenly made me sick. Everything okay, Dad? Emily asked. Her smile was so bright, so radiant. It was the smile of a predator who had just set a perfect trap. Just work, I said, waving my hand dismissively. The lawyers are already finding loose ends from the sale. I picked up my wine glass. Her wine glass now, though she didn't know it. No, I set it down. Not yet. I had to be sure. I looked at my glass, the deep red Cabernet. It looked perfect. Undisturbed. My mind raced back. Emily's comment from last week, Dad, you've been so forgetful lately. You missed our dinner reservation on Tuesday. I hadn't missed it. They had canceled it and told me I got the day wrong. I remembered Ryan's comment just 2 days ago. Peter, you seem confused. Are you sure you're okay to manage all this money alone? It all clicked. It wasn't poison. It was incapacitation. The powder wasn't meant to kill me. It was designed to mimic a stroke, to create sudden, terrifying confusion, to make me look like I had snapped right after securing $60 million. They wanted to have me declared incompetent. I needed to make the switch. Ryan was telling a long, boring story about one of his import deals, something about textiles from Turkey. Emily was hanging on his every word, her eyes sparkling, playing the part of the adoring wife. They were so busy performing for me, they weren't really watching me. I waited. I needed a moment of distraction. The waiter, not Evan, a different one, came to refill our water glasses. This was my moment. As the waiter reached for Ryan's glass, I accidentally jerked my arm, my elbow connecting solidly with Ryan's full glass of water. Oh, goodness! I exclaimed. Peter, honestly. Ryan snapped, jumping back as ice water flooded the white tablecloth and dripped onto his $1,000 pants. It was chaos for 5 seconds. Emily gasped. Ryan cursed under his breath, grabbing his napkin. The waiter rushed in with more napkins, apologizing profusely. In that 5 seconds of chaos, my hands moved. It was a simple, fluid motion I had practiced in my mind a dozen times on the walk back from the lobby. My right hand picked up my tainted glass. My left hand picked up Emily's clean glass. I moved them both out of the way of the spill, and when I set them back down, they were reversed. It was done. I am so sorry, Ryan, I said, dabbing at the table with my own napkin. I guess I am a little tired. My old age is catching up to me. It's fine, Dad, Ryan said, composing himself. He shared a knowing, triumphant look with Emily. They thought my clumsiness was the first scene in their play. They thought their plan was working. They had no idea. The waiter finished cleaning up the mess and left. The tension was gone, replaced by their smug, predatory anticipation. I picked up my glass. Emily's original, clean glass. Well, I said, raising it high. Despite my clumsiness, I want to make a toast. They both raised their glasses. Emily was holding my original glass, the one containing the powder that was supposed to destroy my mind. To family, I said, looking directly into Emily's eyes, voice hardening slightly, and to getting everything you deserve. To family, Emily echoed, smiling that brilliant, fake smile. She took a large, confident sip. The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. I ate my steak, or rather, I moved it around my plate. I listened to Ryan brag about a European expansion he was planning with my money, I assumed. And I watched Emily. It started subtly. She blinked hard, as if trying to clear her vision from a fog. Ryan, she murmured, interrupting him mid-sentence. Honey, the lights, they seem very bright. Ryan chuckled, annoyed at being interrupted. It's l'orangerie, darling. Everything is bright. As I was saying, the Berlin market is no, Emily said. Her voice was thicker. She put her hand to her temple. Her words started to slur. I feel dizzy. Voice gets weaker. Ryan, I don't feel well. Ryan's smile faded. He looked confused. His eyes darted to me, then back to her. Emily, stop playing. You've had one glass of wine. I'm not playing, she tried to shout, but it came out as a mumble. She tried to stand up, pushing her chair back with a scrape. The room, it's spinning. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She slumped sideways, her body hitting the plush velvet seat with a dull thud. Her arms began to twitch, a small, faint seizure. Ryan stared, frozen in pure, unadulterated panic. I dropped my napkin and stood up, my face a mask of fatherly terror. Oh my God, Emily. Somebody call 911. I let the silence hang for 3 full seconds. The entire restaurant, a room built on hushed tones and the clinking of expensive crystal, was now dead quiet. Every eye was on our table. Ryan was staring at his wife, his mouth half open, his mind clearly not processing her collapse, but the collapse of his plan. He wasn't moving toward her. He wasn't crying out. He was frozen. That was my cue. I shoved my chair back, the heavy legs screaming against the polished marble floor. My God, Emily. I shouted, my voice cracked perfectly, a symphony of fatherly panic. I rushed to her side, grabbing her limp, cold hand. Help! Somebody help! Call 911. My daughter, she's not breathing right. I grabbed Ryan's shoulder, shaking him hard. He was still staring, his face a mask of pale, stunned horror. Not grief, not fear for her, but the raw, logistical terror of an accomplice whose scheme had just exploded in his face. Ryan, do something! I yelled, playing the part of the confused, terrified old man. Call an ambulance. Don't just sit there. This snapped him out of it, but not in the way a loving husband would. He didn't rush to Emily's side. He didn't check her pulse. He immediately, instinctively, tried to control the narrative. No, Ryan said, his voice a low, sharp hiss. He grabbed his own phone, but didn't dial. He looked at the restaurant manager, who was approaching quickly, his face a mask of professional concern. Number 911, Ryan insisted. She's fine. She's had too much to drink. I looked at him, my feigned confusion turning to feigned outrage. Drunk, Ryan. She's convulsing. Look at her. She's shaking. She does this, huh? Ryan said quickly, his eyes darting around the room, lying, building an alibi on the fly. She mixes her anxiety medication with wine. It happens all the time. It's embarrassing. He actually leaned down and tried to pull her up by the arm. We just need to get her home. I'm so sorry, everyone. He was trying to move her. He was trying to get her out of the public eye, away from EMTs who would run tests, away from neutral doctors at an emergency room who would run toxicology reports. He needed to get her to his doctor, the corrupt Dr. Reed, to get his plan back on track. I saw Evan, the young waiter, my savior, watching from the service station. His face was pale, his eyes wide, locked onto mine. He knew what was happening. Ryan turned to the manager, his voice dripping with false embarrassment. I'm so sorry about this. We'll take her. We're leaving. Just give us a minute to get her to the car. He was trying to stop the outside world from getting involved. He was desperate to salvage his plan. He leaned down to Emily again, but he wasn't checking her breathing. He was whispering, hissing in her ear, Emily, get up. Get up now. Stop this. I knew I had to override him. He's in shock. I shouted to the manager, gesturing to Ryan. He doesn't know what he's saying. She's not drunk. She barely touched her wine. She needs a doctor. Just as Ryan was about to physically lift Emily from the chair, Evan stepped forward, his own cell phone already pressed to his ear. It's too late, sir, Evan said, looking past Ryan to the manager, his voice loud and clear in the silent room. I've already called 911. They're on their way. They said not to move her under any circumstances. Ryan's head snapped toward Evan. The look in his eyes was no longer panic. It was pure, unadulterated murder. You did what? He spat. You little dash. I told you she was fine. You're fired. You have no idea what you've just done. The manager, a tall man who was clearly not paid enough for this, stepped between them. Mr. Ford, the waiter did the correct thing. If a guest collapses on our premises, we are legally required to call for medical assistance. Please step back. Ryan's mask of the charming, successful son-in-law was gone. He looked trapped, a cornered animal. He stared at me, his chest heaving, and I saw his mind finally putting the pieces together. The spilled water, the switched glasses, my sudden, elderly clumsiness. He knew. He didn't know how I knew, but he knew I had done this. The wail of sirens cut through the night, growing closer, louder. The sound was a beautiful, terrible symphony. It was the sound of my plan working. It was the sound of justice arriving. The paramedics rushed in, pushing a gurney, their movements efficient and fast. They ignored Ryan's protests, brushing him aside. "Sir, we need you to step back." "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "What did she take?" one of them asked, shining a light in her eyes. "I don't know," Ryan yelled, trying to regain control. It's her medication. She mixes it. It's for anxiety." "Which medication, sir?" "We need a name." Ryan froze. Of course, he froze. He couldn't say the name of the antipsychotic drug without incriminating himself. I don't know the name. It's just for anxiety. She keeps it in her purse." They loaded her onto the gurney. She was unconscious, her face pale and slack. For a second, I felt a genuine pang of pity. She was still my daughter, my Emily, but she had made her choice the moment she uncapped that vial. The restaurant was silent. Every diner, every waiter, every busboy was watching. I followed the gurney out, hunched over, playing the part of the grieving, confused father. "My baby, oh God, is she going to be okay?" I whimpered. We reached the ambulance doors. The paramedics were loading her in. I stood on the sidewalk under the flashing red and blue lights. That's when Ryan grabbed my arm. His grip wasn't that of a panicked son-in-law. It was steel. He pulled me aside, just out of earshot of the paramedics, his body blocking me from their view. His voice was no longer panicked. It was a low, venomous whisper. The voice of the man Laura had warned me about for years. "What did you do?" he hissed, his face inches from mine, the smell of expensive wine and rage on his breath. I let the tears well up in my eyes. I let my body tremble. I looked him right in the eye, a broken old man. "Me?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Son, what did she drink?" Pause, a breath. The emergency room at St. Jude was a universe of controlled chaos. The lights were too bright, an assault on the eyes, and the air smelled of antiseptic, bleach, and burnt coffee. It was the smell of panic and routine all mixed together. Nurses moved like shadows, their voices calm and clipped, their faces impassive. They wheeled Emily into Trauma Bay 3, and Ryan followed them, almost tripping over his own expensive shoes. His voice was a high-pitched whine that grated on my nerves. "She's allergic to shellfish," he was shouting at the intake nurse. "I think she ate some bad shellfish. That's all it is." It must have been the scallops. He was already building his false narrative, seeding the lie. I hung back, playing the part one had chosen, the shocked, elderly father, confused by the noise. My hands clasped in front of me, just watching. A young doctor, maybe 30 years old, pushed through the curtain. His scrubs were wrinkled, and he carried the permanent exhaustion of an ER resident, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and focused. This was not the man they were expecting. This was not Dr. Reed. This was a complication. "Mr. Ford, I'm Dr. Chen. I need to know exactly what your wife took." Ryan, breathless, stuck to his script. "It was an allergy. Shellfish. She's terribly allergic. Just give her an EpiPen. She'll be fine. She must have had a reaction." Dr. Chen ignored him. He shone a small, bright light into Emily's unseen eyes, one, then the other. He lifted her arm. It dropped lifelessly to the gurney. He pinched the skin on her hand. "Nothing." "Mr. Ford," Dr. Chen said, his voice flat, cutting through Ryan's manufactured panic. "This is not anaphylaxis. Her airways are clear. There is no facial or laryngeal swelling. There's no rash. Her pupils are pinpoint. This is a severe overdose. I need to run a full toxicology screen." Ryan's practiced panic turned real. He physically moved to block the doctor from Emily. "No, I'm her husband. I refuse the tests. It's an allergy. You're wasting time. She just needs adrenaline." His voice was too loud now, bordering on hysterical. A nurse at the nearby station looked up, alarmed. I watched him. This was the performance of a guilty man. A man who knew exactly what was in her blood and was terrified of it being named. He wasn't trying to save his wife. He was trying to save his plan. Dr. Chin didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Sir, your wife is presenting with severe neurological symptoms, including seizures and respiratory depression. If you continue to obstruct my ability to diagnose her, I will have security remove you from this trauma bay. Am I clear?" Ryan's face turned a shade of purple. He looked like he wanted to hit the doctor. He was trapped. His eyes darted around the room and landed on me, wide and screaming for help. "Dad, tell him. Tell him she's fine. It's just an allergy." This was my moment. I stepped forward, letting my voice tremble. I practiced this tremble in the ambulance. I let the tears, which were very real, well in my eyes, though they were tears of rage, not grief. "Doctor," I whispered, grabbing his arm. "Please, just save her. My son, he's in shock. He doesn't know what he's saying. Do whatever you have to. Please, just save my little girl." Dr. Chen looked at me with a flash of genuine pity. He nodded, dismissing Ryan completely. Thank you, Mr. Shah. We will. He turned to the nurse. Full talk screen, CBC, head CT, push Narcan just in case, and get her on a saline drip. Now. Ryan was defeated. He slammed his fist against the wall, a performative act of grief for the nurses, but I knew it was the rage of failure. We were moved to the sterile gray waiting room. The chairs were hard plastic, bolted to the floor. The coffee in the styrofoam cup I held tasted like acid. Ryan was pacing the length of the room, his phone pressed to his ear, whispering furiously. I saw him mouth the name Reed several times. He was trying to get his real doctor here. He was trying to intercept the results, to control the narrative, but it was too late. The machine was already in motion. I just sat there under the buzzing fluorescent lights and finally let myself process it. I thought back to Laura. He only looks at your checkbook, Peter. Her voice was so clear in my memory. A gentle warning I had dismissed as a mother being overprotective of her daughter. Men like that, she had said, they don't build things, they just take. I had been a builder my entire life, and he was a taker. I thought of Emily, my sweet, bright Emily. How had he corrupted her? How had he turned her against the father who had given her everything? The answer was simple, money. The $60 million. But the plan, it was so specific. The drug, the symptoms, it all pointed to one thing. I remembered the emails. About a week ago, I had been on Emily's laptop trying to find a family recipe for her mother's lasagna that she had supposedly saved. I had accidentally seen her inbox. There was a subject line that stuck with me, the Shaw contingency. I thought it was about a surprise party, maybe for my retirement. I smiled and closed it. Contingency? What a fool I'd been. And I remembered Ryan's questions, not just about the shipping containers, but about me. Dad, are you sure you're feeling okay? You seem to be forgetting things. You missed our dinner reservation on Tuesday. I hadn't missed it. They had canceled it and told me I got the day wrong. They were building a case. They were planting the seeds of my senility. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. They were going to use this drug, a drug that mimics a stroke, that causes acute confusion, that makes a 68-year-old man look senile, to have me declared incompetent. The timing was perfect, the day after my $60 million deal closed. It was brilliant. It was monstrous. An hour later, Dr. Chen returned. His face was grim. He wasn't looking at Ryan. He was looking at me. Mr. Shaw, I'm afraid the news isn't good. The toxicology report came back. Your daughter has a massive, near-lethal dose of olanzapine in her system. Ryan, who had been on the phone with what sounded like his lawyer, froze. Olandash? What? I've never heard of it. Olanzapine, Dr. Chen said, his voice sharp and precise. It's a very potent antipsychotic medication. We use it to treat schizophrenia, severe bipolar disorder. It is not anxiety medication. It is not something you mix with wine. A dose this high? Frankly, I'm required to notify the police. This looks like an attempted suicide or something else. Ryan started sputtering. Suicide? No, she wouldn't. She's happy. We were celebrating. Dr. Chen held up a hand. I need to explain the symptoms to you, sir. In a healthy individual, a massive dose like this doesn't just cause seizures. It mimics the symptoms of acute, rapid-onset dementia. It causes confusion, slurred speech, psychosis, and neurological damage that can look identical to a severe stroke. And there it was, the final, disgusting piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just any drug. It was the perfect drug. A drug that wouldn't just make me sick. It would make me look crazy. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to erase me. To legally erase my mind, my identity, my signature. They were going to have me committed. They were going to put me in a home, take control of my $60 million, and leave me to rot in a diaper, drooling into my soup while they lived on my life's work. Ryan was staring at the doctor, his face ashen. He finally understood that the doctor wasn't just diagnosing Emily. He was describing the very weapon they had chosen. The plan was in ruins. Is she going to be okay? Ryan stammered, his act as a loving husband returning, but it was too late. His voice was hollow. We're pumping her stomach and administering the antidote, Dr. Chen said coolly. She'll be very sick for a few days, and she will be placed under a 72-hour psychiatric hold as is protocol. But yes, physically she should recover. Dr. Chen looked at me, his eyes full of pity. Mr. Shaw, I'm so sorry you had to see this. I'll give you two a moment. He left. The silence in the waiting room was heavy, broken only by the sound of Ryan's ragged breathing. He knew. He knew that I knew. He looked at me, his eyes no longer full of rage, but of a new dawning terror. And the war had just begun. A beat, the sound of a cold, calculated sigh. Ryan's composure was a cheap suit, and it was ripping at the seams. He collapsed onto one of the hard plastic chairs in the waiting room, but he couldn't sit still. He was vibrating with a toxic energy. He was a cornered rat, and he was getting desperate. I knew my part to play. I slumped into a chair across from him, burying my face in my hands. I let my shoulders shake, mimicking the sobs of a broken old man. I was crying, but not for Emily. I was crying for the daughter I had already lost, the one who had tried to chemically erase my mind. Dad. Ryan's voice was sharp, suspicious. Are you okay? I looked up, letting him see the tears I knew were staining my face. I don't understand, Ryan. Antipsychotics? Why? Why would she have that? Does my daughter have schizophrenia? Have you been hiding this from me? It was the perfect question. It gave him an escape route, a lie he could build on. He seized it. I didn't want to tell you like this, Dad, he said, his voice dropping into a fake, compassionate whisper. We've been struggling. She's been seeing a doctor. Dr. Reed. She must have confused her bottles. She must have taken the wrong dose. Dr. Reed. The first piece of the puzzle. I filed the name away. Oh God, I whimpered. My poor girl. And Dr. Chen said, the police. Why the police, Ryan? He's an idiot. Ryan snapped, his mask slipping. He doesn't understand. He's just a resident. He's overreacting. I'll handle it. I'm calling Dr. Reed right now. He'll come down here and straighten this all out. He'll explain. Yes, I said, my voice trembling. Yes, please, son. Call him. I need some air. I think I'm going to be sick. I staggered to my feet, hunched over, and pushed my way through the double doors leading to the main corridor. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't go outside. I hid in a small alcove by the vending machines, just out of sight of the waiting room doors, but close enough to hear. Ryan must have thought I was gone. He burst out of the waiting room a second later, his phone already to his ear. He was pacing, his voice a venomous whisper that echoed in the sterile hallway. Reed, it's me. The plan is a disaster. She drank it. Emily drank it. He stopped, listening, his free hand tearing at his hair. I don't know how. The old man, he must have. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He's here, acting all confused and broken. But Reed, he's here. He's not the one who took the drug. Another pause. Ryan's face was contorted with rage. Yes, she's stable, but they ran a talk screen. They know it's olanzapine. They're talking about a psych hold. Police reports. This is falling apart. He was practically vibrating now. He slammed his fist against the cinder block wall. What do we do? The hearing is at 8 a.m. That's in 5 hours. How are we supposed to get a conservatorship over him if he's the picture of health and she's the one in the psych ward? 8 a.m. The second piece of the puzzle. Dr. Reed. An 8 a.m. hearing. No. Ryan suddenly yelled into the phone. No, you listen to me. You're in this just as deep as I am. Your gambling debts aren't my problem. You were paid to handle the medical side, so you handle it. You get down to this hospital. You tell them Dr. Chen is an idiot. You tell them you're her primary physician. You tell them she's unstable. That she's a suicide risk. That she's been stealing his medication. I don't care what you say. Just fix this. And you'd better be ready to testify at 8 a.m. He hung up, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. He stood there for a moment, his back to me, trying to regain his composure. He ran his hands through his hair, straightened his suit jacket, and took a deep, shuddering breath. Then he turned and saw me. He froze. His face went completely white. He had no idea how long I'd been standing there. Dad, he stammered. I was just I didn't let him finish. I stumbled forward, my hand on my heart. Ryan, I heard you yelling. What's happening? Who is Reed? What did he mean, fix this? Ryan's mind was racing. I could see the gears turning, the lies forming. He put his arm around my shoulder, his grip too tight, guiding me back toward the waiting room. His fake, comforting son persona was back, but it was cracked, desperate. Dad, you misunderstood. Dr. Reed is Emily's psychiatrist. I was angry. I was yelling at him because I feel like he failed her. He should have warned us she was this unstable. Unstable? I whispered. Suicide risk? He thinks she might have done this on purpose, Dad. Ryan said, his voice catching. He was trying to pivot. If he couldn't frame me for dementia, he would frame his own wife for suicide. He thinks she tried to kill herself. But why? I asked, letting my voice crack again. He doesn't know. Maybe it's my fault, he said, lowering his eyes. The stress of your new money. It's been a lot for her. Maybe she felt inadequate. It was a brilliant, disgusting lie. He was already planting the idea that my $60 million was the problem. The destabilizing force that had driven his wife to this. I let him guide me back to the chair. I need to go home, son, I whispered. This is too much. My heart. I can't be here. Will you be okay? Relief washed over his face. The last thing he wanted was me here, asking questions, being seen by doctors who weren't on his payroll. Yes, Dad. Of course, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. You go home, get some rest. You look terrible. I'll stay here. I'll handle everything with Dr. Reed when he gets here. I'll call you as soon as I know more. He practically pushed me toward the exit. Take a cab. I'll pay for it. Okay, son. Okay. I walked out of the hospital, a frail old man, trembling, devastated. The act held until the automatic doors slid shut behind me. The second the night air hit my face, my back straightened. The trembling stopped. The grief vanished, replaced by a cold, hard focus. It was 3 a.m. I got in a cab. 52, Crooked Creek Lane. I told the driver my address, but as we drove, I leaned forward. Actually, driver, can you take me to my daughter's house first? 47, Willow Crest Drive. I need to pick up a few things for her. He nodded and changed course. Emily and Ryan lived in a new-build mansion that my $60 million hadn't paid for yet. I knew they kept a spare key under the pot of a dead fern by the back door. Ryan thought he was clever. I just thought he was lazy. The house was dark. I let myself in, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with adrenaline. I knew exactly where to go. The home office. I sat down at Emily's sleek white desk. I turned on her laptop. No password. Another sign of their arrogance. They never believed I was a threat. I opened her email. It didn't take long. I didn't need to search for conspiracy. I just searched for the name Ryan had so kindly provided, Reed. The chain popped up. Dozens of emails between Emily, Ryan, and a Dr. A. Reed. I read them, and with every word, my blood ran colder. From Ryan Ford to Dr. A. Reed. Subject, the Shaw contingency. Reed, he's becoming a problem. He's questioning things. He's asking about the shipping manifests. The sale of the company is a disaster for us. We need to accelerate the timeline. From Dr. A. Reed to Ryan Ford. Subject, Re, the Shaw contingency. The risk is high. A forced psychiatric hold needs a precipitating event. You can't just say he's confused. He needs to be confused. I've prescribed the olanzapine under a false name. The dosage I recommended will induce acute psychosis and symptoms mimicking a stroke within 20 minutes of ingestion. From Emily Shaw Ford to Ryan Ford, Dr. A. Reed. Subject, Re, the Shaw contingency. I'll do it at the celebration dinner. He'll be distracted. He trusts me. Once he's at the hospital, Reed, you take over. You certify him. Ryan, you file the petition first thing in the morning. We have to get control of the assets before the federal audit begins. The federal audit? My God, I had been right. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the logistics. Ryan had been using my company, my good name, to run his criminal enterprise. And then I saw the final email in the chain, sent just yesterday. It was from a law firm to Ryan Ford, Emily Shaw Ford. From Jacobs and Hall PLC. Attached, emergency conservatorship petition, Peter Shaw. Hot PDF. My hands were shaking. I clicked the attachment. There it was. My life reduced to a legal document. Petitioner Ryan Ford seeks emergency conservatorship over his father-in-law, Peter Shaw, on the reasons Mr. Shaw has been exhibiting signs of rapid onset senile dementia, paranoia, confusion, financial irresponsibility. And the final, damning line, to be supported by the expert testimony of his primary care physician, Dr. Albert Reed, who will attest to Mr. Shaw's inability to manage his own affairs. The hearing is set for November 4th, 8 a.m., courtroom 3B. Today, in less than 5 hours. They had planned it all. The drug, the dinner, the medical expert, the emergency hearing. By 9 a.m. this morning, I was supposed to be a ward of the state, with my criminal son-in-law controlling a $60 million kingdom. I looked at the clock on the wall. 3:55 a.m. I closed the laptop. I had everything I needed. Not today, I whispered to the empty, silent house. Not ever. Sound of a car door closing, a distant city hum. I left my daughter's dark house at 3:05 a.m. The cab ride from the hospital had been a blur, but the drive from Emily's home to my own was sharp, cold, and clear. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The frail, devastated old man I had been playing for the last few hours was gone, left behind in the hospital waiting room. The man driving my sedan now was Peter Shaw, the CEO. The man who had built a $60 million company from nothing. The man who had faced down hostile takeovers and corporate spies. The man who was now, at 4 o'clock in the morning, officially at war. I picked up my phone. I didn't hesitate. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. This had better be a matter of national security, Peter. A deep, gravelly voice answered. Right, I said, my voice steady, cutting through the silence of the empty streets. Wake up. I need you at the office. Not in the morning. Now. There was a half-second pause. I'm on my way. He hung up. Mr. Wright doesn't ask unnecessary questions. He's not a family lawyer. He doesn't handle wills or divorces. He's a shark. He's the man who structured the Apex Biodyne acquisition. He's the man who crushed a competitor's frivolous patent lawsuit 2 years ago with a single, brutal cross-examination. He was, I realized, the perfect and only man for this job. I pulled into the underground garage of his downtown high-rise at 4:30 a.m. The city was a ghost town, wrapped in fog. I took the private elevator straight to the penthouse floor. The doors opened onto a dark lobby, but the lights to his corner office were already on, a beacon in the darkness. He was standing by his window, overlooking the sleeping city, already in a crisp white shirt and tie. He had a pot of coffee brewing. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. "Peter," he said, not turning around. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I walked in and sat in one of the leather chairs opposite his massive desk. Worse, right? I've seen a monster. 2 of them. And one of them is my own daughter. For the next 30 minutes, I told him everything. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I gave him a CEO's report, cold, factual, chronological. The $60 million celebration, the waiter Evan and his warning, the switched glasses, the collapse, the ER, Dr. Chen's honest diagnosis, olanzapine, and antipsychotics. Ryan's immediate panic, his attempt to cover it up, to blame an allergy. Wright listened, his face an impassive mask, his fingers steepled. He just nodded, absorbing every detail. And then I said, Ryan made his first mistake. He named their doctor. A Dr. Reed? He thought I was a grieving, confused old man, so he talked right in front of me. I repeated the phone call I'd overheard in the hospital corridor. "Reed, the plan is a disaster." She drank it. "The hearing is at 8 a.m. You have to fix this." Wright's eyes narrowed. "A hearing? 8 a.m.? What hearing?" "That," I said, "is the second thing." I took a deep breath. While Ryan was arguing with the nurses, I went to Emily's side to comfort her. Her purse was on the gurney. She was unconscious. I reached into my suit pocket. I pulled out the small brown glass vial, still inside the napkin I'd wrapped it in. I placed it gently on his polished mahogany desk. There were still a few grains of powder at the bottom. I found this in her purse. And then I went to their house. "You broke in?" Wright asked. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. I used the spare key they forgot I had. I checked her laptop. I searched her name, Reed. Wright's impassive mask finally cracked. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "Peter, you old fox." She saved it. All of it. The entire conspiracy. An email chain called the Shaw Contingency. Emails between her, Ryan, and this Dr. Reed. He prescribed the drug. He advised them on the dosage. He was going to be their expert medical witness. Witness for what? Wright asked, though he already knew. I leaned forward. "A hearing this morning, 8 a.m., courtroom 3B. I forwarded you the email with the attachment. It was an emergency petition for a conservatorship." "My conservatorship." Wright swiveled in his chair, his computer screen lighting up his face. He read the email, then opened the PDF. I heard him let out a low whistle. "Oh my God. Rapid onset senile dementia, paranoia, financial irresponsibility, a danger to himself and his assets." He looked up at me, his eyes now sharp, all business. "They were going to have you drugged, declared incompetent, and committed, all in the space of 12 hours. And Ryan would have full control of all $60 million before the market even opened." He stood up. The shark was in the water. "Peter, we are going to destroy them," he said, his voice a low growl. He began to pace. "This isn't just family fraud. This is conspiracy to commit aggravated assault. This is medical malpractice. This is perjury. This is beautiful in the most disgusting way." He picked up his phone. He didn't dial. He hit a single speed dial button. "Peterson," he barked into the receiver. "It's right. Wake up." He didn't wait for a reply. "I need a full workup on a doctor. Name is Albert Reed. R.E.D. I need to know everything. Bank accounts, debts, medical board citations, mistresses, parking tickets. I want to know what brand of toothpaste he uses, and I need it. Not now. I needed it 30 minutes ago." He hung up. He looked at me. "Okay, they have a hearing at 8 a.m. We'll be there. But we are not going to defend Peter. We are going to attack. This Dr. Reed is the weak link. He's the one who connects Ryan's plan to a criminal act. They think they're walking into a simple family court hearing to roll over a confused old man." Wright poured me a cup of coffee. His hand was perfectly steady. "They have no idea," he said, a grim smile on his face, "that they're actually walking into their own execution." It was 5:15 in the morning. The sky outside Wright's penthouse office was just beginning to bruise with the first pale gray light of dawn. The city below was silent, a sea of dark glass and steel. The only sound in the massive, quiet room was the hiss of the high-end coffee machine and the steady, rhythmic click-click-click of Wright tapping his gold pen on his legal pad. The adrenaline from the hospital, from the break-in at Emily's house, was starting to wear off. It was being replaced by something else. A cold, heavy exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. But it wasn't the exhaustion of an old man. It was the exhaustion of a general on the eve of a battle he never asked to fight. He's been planning this for months, right? I said. My voice sounded rough in the stillness. He's been playing me. My own daughter. I had to stop. Saying it out loud made it real in a way the emails hadn't. The pain was a physical thing. A sharp, constant pressure behind my ribs. Wright didn't offer sympathy. That's not why I pay him. He's a strategist. He poured me another cup of coffee, black and strong enough to strip paint. Grief makes people blind, Peter, he said, his voice a low gravel. They counted on you being the grieving husband. They miscalculated. They didn't count on you still being the CEO. He was right. They saw Dad. They saw the old man in the worn cardigan who missed his wife. They forgot who had built the company they were so desperate to steal. They forgot that I didn't get to where I am by being naive. I had just been naive about them. I should have listened, I murmured, staring into the black coffee. God, I should have listened to Laura. Wright looked up from his notes. His eyes were sharp. Laura, what did she know? She saw him, I said, the memory washing over me, fresh and painful. From the very beginning. From the first dinner he had at our house. Ryan was so charming, full of compliments, laughing at my bad jokes. I was happy for Emily. But Laura, she had that X-ray vision for people. That night after they left, she was quiet. I asked her what was wrong. I could still see her clear as day, sitting in our old armchair by the fireplace, a book open on her lap that she wasn't reading. He doesn't see her, Peter, she told me, her voice soft. He sees her name. He sees Shaw. He sees Apex Biodyne. I told her she was being cynical. I told her Emily was in love and happy, and that was all that mattered. She tried again, I continued, my voice growing thick. About a year later, Ryan had just lost a major investment. $20,000 of their money, or so he said. Emily came to me crying, humiliated. Of course, I wrote the check. I thought I was helping my daughter. That night, Laura was furious. Not at me. At him. A sigh of deep shame. I looked at Wright, the shame of that memory hot on my face. She said, he's a taker, Peter. He only looks at your checkbook. He's a parasite, and he's teaching our daughter how to be one too. We had the biggest fight of our 40-year marriage. I accused her of being jealous of Emily's happiness. I told her she was wrong. I closed my eyes. The coffee cup was warm in my hands. She never brought it up again. She knew. She saw this coming, and I was too blind, too proud to see it. She's been gone 3 years. And the first thing Ryan did after the funeral, after a respectful 2 weeks, was ask me to co-sign a loan for a new car. And I did it. For Emily's sake. And now this. Wright nodded slowly, absorbing the emotional data. Okay, so it started as simple greed, but this, drugging you, an emergency court hearing. This is desperation, Peter. $300,000 for the doctor is a massive lever. Ryan must be in his own hole, deep. Deeper than just credit cards. And that's when the other piece clicked into place. The piece that had been bothering me for months. The one that never made any sense. The shipping manifests, I said, almost to myself. Wright's head snapped up. What? Ryan, he's always asking about my shipping operations. My company, Apex Biodyne. We ship highly controlled biological compounds, genetic samples, experimental pharmaceuticals. They move in climate-controlled, GPS-tracked containers. It's a logistics nightmare, heavily monitored by the FDA, the DEA, you name it. It's the most secure and most boring part of my business. And he was interested in it. Obsessed? Wright asked. Obsessed, I said. For the last 6 months, he's been asking, Dad, how secure are those roads? Who handles your customs clearance in Rotterdam? Ever had a container just go missing? I thought it was just idle curiosity. I thought he was trying to sound smart, to impress me, to show interest in my work. I looked at Wright and I saw the realization dawning on his face at the same instant it dawned on mine. But what if it wasn't? I said, my voice dropping. What if he wasn't just asking? My company has a flawless 30-year logistics record. What if he found a way? What if he was using my corporate routes, my clean, fast-tracked shipping lanes, to move his own imports? Wright's eyes lit up with a terrifying, cold clarity. My God, Peter, if he was piggybacking on your shipments, the sale of the company wouldn't just be a payday for him. It would be a disaster. A $60 million acquisition by a global corporation triggers a mandatory top-to-bottom federal audit. A full, deep-dive audit of everything, including every single shipping manifest for the last 5 years. The room suddenly felt ice-cold. He wasn't trying to get the $60 million, I whispered, the full, ugly truth finally landing. He was trying to stop the audit. He needed to get power of attorney. He needed to get control of the company before the sale finalized so he could bury the evidence of his own crimes. Before Wright could even respond, the private line on his desk buzzed. It was a harsh, slicing sound in the 6 a.m. stillness. He snatched it up. Peterson, talk to me. He listened. His face, already grim, darkened. He scribbled a note. Where? How much? Are you sure? Good. Send it to my encrypted server. Right now. He hung up the phone. He looked at me. The final piece of the puzzle had just been slammed into place. It's worse than we thought, Wright said, his voice flat. Our private investigator just ran the financials on Dr. Reed. He didn't just find debts. He found the source. Reed owes $310,000 in gambling debts to an offshore sports book. Wright paused, letting the weight of the next words land. And guess who the parent company of that offshore book is? I waited. A shell corporation based in the Caymans. RF Imports. Ryan Ford Imports, I whispered. Ryan doesn't just owe Reed money, Wright said, standing up and grabbing his briefcase. Ryan owns him. He's not a conspirator. He's a puppet. He checked his watch. 6:15 a.m. Let's go, Peter. We have a hearing to attend. Phone rings loudly, then silence. The phone on Wright's desk shattered the 6 a.m. silence. It was a harsh, digital ring, an alarm signaling the next phase of the battle. We both stared at it. My caller ID showed Ryan's face smiling, taken at a barbecue last summer, a lifetime ago. Wright just nodded once. Speaker, Peter. And remember who you are. You're not a CEO. You're a confused, terrified old man who just saw his daughter collapse. I took a breath. I picked up the phone. My hand was steady, but I made my voice tremble. Hello, Ryan. Dad. Oh, thank God. Where are you? I've been calling your cell, the house. I was about to call the police. Are you okay? His voice was a masterpiece of fake concern. A performance so slick it made my skin crawl. He was an artist of deceit. I don't know, I stammered, cupping my hand over the phone as if I were trying to hide my words from the world. I'm at a diner, a coffee shop. I couldn't be in the house, Ryan. Not after last night. All of Laura's things. I needed to think. I heard him let out a long, slow sigh. It wasn't a sigh of relief that I was safe. It was the sigh of a predator who had just located his prey. He thought I was weak, broken, and wandering the streets in a daze. He thought he had me. Dad, I understand. I really do, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. But listen to me. I have some news. It's about Emily. Emily? I asked, my voice cracking. Is she worse? No. She's stable. She's resting. He paused, setting the hook. But I just spoke to her doctor. Her real doctor. The specialist who's been treating her. Dr. Reed. Reed? I repeated, as if trying to place the name. The man you were calling from the hospital? Yes, Dad, Ryan said, his voice smooth and reassuring. He's been treating her for this condition for months. He came to the hospital as soon as I called him. He reviewed her chart. He talked to Dr. Chen. I pushed. What did he say? Here it came. The second trap. Dad, he's worried. He's worried about you. I stayed silent. I let the confused pause hang in the air. Me? I finally whispered. Why? Why me? He says, Ryan continued, he says, based on what I told him, your forgetfulness lately, your outburst at the restaurant, how you were so confused. He says these neurological conditions, they can be genetic. He says what happened to Emily? It could be a precursor to what's happening to you. It was brilliant. I had to give him that. It was a disgusting, brilliant lie. He was building a bridge connecting his wife's suicide attempt directly to my senility, with his paid-off doctor as the foundation. I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. I feel fine. I'm just upset, son. I'm Dad. Listen to me, Ryan said, his voice hardening just a fraction, taking on an air of authority, of a son forced to take charge. Dr. Reed is a professional. He's the best in his field. And he's on his way to your house right now to check on you. It's for your own good. I'll meet him there in 30 minutes. There it is, I thought. The trap wasn't just a phone call. It was a house call. He couldn't get me to the hospital, so he was bringing his corrupt doctor to me. Reed would arrive, find me alone, confused and agitated from the night's events. He would perform a preliminary exam in my living room, and then at 8 a.m., he would testify under oath that he had just seen me and that I was without a doubt a danger to myself and my $60 million estate. He was moving the battlefield from the hospital, which he had lost, to my home, which he thought he controlled. I had to give him the performance of his life. No, I shouted into the phone, a high-pitched, paranoid wail. No doctors. I'm not sick. I don't need a doctor, Ryan. I'm fine. I'm just tired. Why are you doing this? I gave him exactly the symptoms he was paying for. I gave him the erratic behavior his petition required. I could hear the smile in his voice as he tried to soothe me. Dad, you hear yourself? You're yelling. You're not making sense. This is exactly what Dr. Reed warned me about. This is the confusion. Please, Dad, just go home. I know you're scared, but just go home and let the doctor talk to you. For me. Do it for Emily. I looked across the desk at Wright. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were alive, analytical. He was enjoying this. I let out a long, shuddering sob, a broken sound torn from the throat of a man who had lost everything. Oh God. Oh God. A doctor at the house. Laura, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I was giving him a masterpiece of senile panic. It's okay, Dad, Ryan said, his voice now a venomous, comforting coo. The voice of a snake lulling its prey. Everything is going to be okay. You just need help. We're going to get you help. Just go home. I'll meet you and Dr. Reed there in 30 minutes. We'll sort this all out. We'll take care of you. Okay, I whispered, my voice sounding small and defeated. Okay, son. Help. Yes. I need help. I'll go home. I'm on my way. I hung up the phone. The line went dead. The silence in Wright's office was absolute, a heavy velvet curtain. I looked at Wright. He hadn't moved. The cold, thin smile on his face was the only thing in the room that seemed alive. He's a good liar, I said. My voice was instantly back to normal. Cold, steady, and sharp. He's a desperate liar, Wright corrected, standing up and closing his briefcase with a heavy, final click. He just confirmed his entire plan. He's sending his star witness, the corrupt doctor, to your house to manufacture evidence for a hearing that he doesn't know we know about. Wright checked his platinum watch. 6:45 a.m. He thinks he has you trapped, Peter. He thinks you're a scared old man running home to hide, about to be cornered in your own living room by his medical expert. I stood up and straightened my tie. The fatigue was gone. The adrenaline was back, clean and sharp as glass. So, what's our move? Wright picked up his briefcase. He walked to the door and held it open for me, the lights of the empty hallway gleaming on the marble floor. A good trap, Wright said, his smile all teeth. Let them go to your house. Let them wait. Let Dr. Reed ring the doorbell of an empty home for the next hour, wondering where his confused patient is. Let them panic. And where will we be? I asked, walking past him into the hall. Wright's voice echoed in the empty corridor as we walked toward the elevator. Peter, we have a hearing to attend. Courtroom 3B. 8 a.m. sharp. And we, he said, pressing the elevator button, are going to be early. Sound of courthouse bustle, hushed murmurs, then silence. 7:45 a.m. The fluorescent lights of the county courthouse hallway hummed, casting a sick, greenish glow on the cheap linoleum floors. The air smelled of stale coffee and old floor wax. This wasn't my world. My world was boardroom negotiations and international contracts. This was a place of petty squabbles and family betrayals. It felt dirty. Mr. Wright and I stood at the end of the hall, just watching the door to courtroom 3B. We were early. They were earlier. Through the small, wire mesh window in the door, I could see them. My family. My executioners. Ryan was pacing. He was wearing his best suit, a dark charcoal wool that I probably paid for, but he looked like hell. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale and clammy. The stress and adrenaline from the night's disaster were rolling off him in waves. He was a man who had gambled everything and was desperate to see the final card. Next to him was his lawyer, a young, slick man in a suit that was too shiny. His hair slicked back with too much gel. He looked like he'd gotten his law degree from a late-night television commercial. And then there was Dr. Reed. He wasn't pacing. He was sitting on the hard wooden bench, completely still, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He was a man in a cage of his own making. A $300,000 cage. He kept dabbing at his forehead with a handkerchief, his eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. He was terrified of me. He should have been terrified of Ryan. Ryan stopped pacing and leaned in to whisper to his lawyer. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were saying. I could almost hear his frantic hiss. He's not here. It's 7:48. He's not coming. The lawyer must have put a calming hand on his arm, motioning for him to keep his voice down. He probably told him what a gift this was. And then Ryan spoke again, his voice a low, triumphant rasp that carried just enough to be heard in the quiet hall where I stood. It's perfect, he whispered to his lawyer. The lawyer nodded, a smug little smile playing on his lips. He's not here. Of course, he's not here. Ryan let out a sound that was half laugh, half hiss. Dr. Reed went to his house just like we planned. He rang the bell for 20 minutes. No answer. The old man is gone. He's probably wandering the freeway in his bathrobe by now. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping, but his arrogance making it sharp. This is better than the original plan. He's a missing person. He's confused. He's scared. He's a danger to himself. This just proves our case. The judge will have to grant the emergency petition. We'll have the guardianship before 9 a.m. I felt Wright's hand on my shoulder, a silent, heavy pressure. Not yet, Peter, he whispered, his voice a low rumble. Don't move. We wait for the judge. We let them commit. We let them lie to an officer of the court. Let them build their own gallows, plank by plank. My rage was a cold, hard stone in my chest. I wanted to burst through that door. I wanted to see the look on my son-in-law's face. I wanted to grab him by his expensive, choking tie and ask him how he dared to destroy my family. But right was right. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was a corporate takedown. And timing was everything. We heard the bailiff's voice from inside. All rise. The Honorable Judge Anderson presiding. The clock on the wall read 7:59 a.m. Wright straightened his tie. He looked at me, and his eyes were not the eyes of a lawyer. They were the eyes of a shark that smells blood in the water. Showtime, he said. Sound of a gavel hitting wood, sharp and loud. We stood outside the heavy oak doors of courtroom 3B. I could hear the sharp rap of the gavel, followed by the bailiff's voice. All rise. The Honorable Judge Anderson presiding. I checked my watch. 8 a.m. on the dot. Wright put a hand on my arm. Patience, Peter. Let him take the bait. Let him lie to the judge. Inside, I could hear the rustling of papers. The judge, a man with a reputation for being impatient and sharp, cleared his throat. His voice was a dry rasp. We're here for the emergency hearing regarding the conservatorship of Peter Shaw. Case number 774B. Is the petitioner, Mr. Ryan Ford, present? I pictured Ryan, my son-in-law, standing up. I pictured his slick, cheap lawyer at his side. I heard the scrape of a chair. A new voice. Young, arrogant. Ryan's lawyer. Yes, Your Honor. Michael Jennings, on behalf of the petitioner, Mr. Ryan Ford, who is present. I could hear the false sympathy in his voice, a slimy, practiced tone that made my stomach turn. Your Honor, we are here today under the most tragic of circumstances. He was performing. My client, Mr. Ford, and his wife Emily, Mr. Shaw's daughter, have been desperately trying to manage what can only be described as a catastrophic and rapid mental decline in Mr. Shaw. I closed my eyes. Catastrophic, rapid, the key words from their email. We had hoped to manage this privately, Your Honor, Jennings continued, his voice dripping with fake sorrow. But last night, a terrible incident occurred. Mr. Shaw, in a fit of severe paranoia and confusion, violently attacked his own daughter at a public restaurant. I heard a gasp from someone in the small gallery, probably a clerk. He caused a massive scene, Jennings said, his voice rising. And then he fled. Fled, Mr. Jennings? The judge asked, his voice sharp. He fled, Your Honor. He is, as of this moment, missing. Ryan's lawyer was playing it perfectly. He was painting me as a violent, senile old man, a danger to himself and others. My client, Mr. Ford, is beside himself with worry. He and his wife's primary physician, Dr. Albert Reed, who is present in court today, ready to testify, rushed to Mr. Shaw's home this morning to conduct a wellness check. They found the house empty. Mr. Shaw is gone. He's in the wind with access to $60 million that he, in his current state, is incapable of managing. We fear he is a danger to himself. The lawyer let that sink in. We are here today to respectfully ask the court to grant an emergency guardianship to my client, Mr. Ford, so he can protect his father-in-law from himself, secure his assets, and get him the medical help he so desperately needs. The silence that followed was heavy. Respectful. The lawyer had painted a devastating picture. I could hear the judge clear his throat, probably preparing to sign the order. He must have seen this a dozen times. A family struggling with an elderly relative who had lost his mind. A very serious allegation, Mr. Jennings, the judge's voice began. Given the assets involved and the fact that Mr. Shaw is missing that was our cue. Wright didn't knock. He simply pushed the heavy oak door open. The thud of the door swinging on its hinges echoed in the suddenly silent courtroom. It was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I apologize for our tardiness, Your Honor. Wright's voice was a low-pitched cannon. It filled the room, a voice of absolute power and control. It seems my client and I were given slightly incorrect information about the timing of this hearing. We stepped inside, me first, right at my shoulder. I was not in a bathrobe. I was not confused. I was wearing my $5,000 custom-tailored Zegna suit, the one I had bought specifically for the Apex acquisition party. My hair was combed, my shoes were shined, my mind was a steel trap. I looked directly at Ryan. The color drained from his face. It didn't just go pale. It went a waxy, translucent white, the color of old candle wax. His jaw dropped open, a wet, ugly, gaping hole. He looked like he had just seen his own ghost. His lawyer, Jennings, spun around, his own smug expression frozen, then shattering like a cheap mirror. But my favorite reaction, was Dr. Reed. He was sitting in the front row. When he saw me, he made a small, involuntary sound, a gasp, a hiccup of pure, unadulterated terror. He physically shrank. He looked at Ryan, his eyes wide, screaming, "You said he was confused. You said he was missing." I walked calmly to the defense table and sat down, placing my briefcase on the floor. Wright sat next to me. We looked like we owned the place. We did. Mr. Mr. Jennings, the judge said, clearly trying to catch up. You said your client's father-in-law was missing. Ryan's lawyer was stammering. He couldn't form a word. He just pointed a shaking finger at me. That. But he, Your Honor. Wright said, standing up smoothly. My name is Harrison Wright. I am Mr. Peter Shaw's legal counsel, and my client, Mr. Shaw, is right here. He is not confused. He is not missing, and he most certainly did not attack his daughter. He is, however, the victim of a depraved and criminal conspiracy, and we are here to address it. Ryan made a noise like a man being strangled. He sank into his chair, his eyes locked on mine. The look of triumph was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was the raw, primal fear of a man who knew he had just been checkmated. Ryan's lawyer, Jennings, looked like he had been physically struck. His mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. He stared at me, then at his client, then at the judge, his cheap, shiny suit suddenly looking like a Halloween costume. Judge Anderson leaned forward, his patience already gone. Mr. Jennings, you told this court your client's father-in-law was missing. He appears to be very much present. Would you care to explain this discrepancy? Jennings ran a finger under his collar, which suddenly seemed 2 sizes too tight. Your Honor. This is a shock. A pleasant one, of course. We're overjoyed that Mr. Shaw is safe. This only proves our point. His erratic behavior, his disappearance, and now his sudden reappearance. It confirms the petition's urgency. He was trying to spin my arrival as more evidence of my insanity. The audacity was breathtaking. We would like to call our first witness. Jennings stammered, shuffling his papers. A man who can speak directly to Mr. Shaw's deteriorating mental state. We call Dr. Albert Reed. A bailiff called the name. Dr. Reed, who had been trying to blend into the wooden bench, flinched as if he'd been tossed. He stood up slowly. His face was slick with a sheen of cold sweat. He looked at Ryan, his eyes wide with panic, a silent, desperate plea. Ryan just stared back, his expression like stone. His eyes promising murder if Reed didn't follow the plan. Reed was a dead man walking. He took the stand. He was sworn in. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely keep it on the Bible. Dr. Reed, Jennings began, finding his footing again. You are Mr. Peter Shaw's primary care physician. Is that correct? Reed cleared his throat. Yes, I have been consulting with him. Yes. And in your professional medical opinion, doctor, what is Mr. Shaw's current mental state? This was it. Reed had to commit. He looked at me, just for a second, then quickly looked away, focusing on a spot on the back wall. Mr. Shaw. Peter. He is in a state of severe decline, Reed said, his voice a practiced monotone. He is exhibiting classic signs of rapid-onset dementia, paranoia, severe memory loss, agitation. He is deeply confused. In your opinion, is he capable of managing his own affairs? Absolutely not. Reed said, the lie coming easier now. He is a danger to himself. He is incapable of understanding complex financial matters, like, say, the $60 million sale of a company. He would be highly susceptible to outside influence. Thank you, doctor. No further. Just a moment. Mr. Wright's voice cut through the room like a steel blade. He stood up, not with aggression, but with a kind of lethal, polite curiosity. I have a few questions for the doctor, Your Honor. Judge Anderson nodded. Counselor. Wright walked toward the witness stand. He was smiling. It was the most terrifying smile I had ever seen. Dr. Reed, good morning. Harrison Wright, counsel for Mr. Shaw. You've painted a very grim picture. You say you are Mr. Shaw's primary care physician. Yes. I have been overseeing his case. I see. That's fascinating, Wright said, pulling out a small file. Because I have Mr. Shaw's complete medical history right here, going back 20 years. His actual primary care physician, a Dr. Harris Patel, has been seeing him for 2 decades. And his last physical 3 months ago declared him to be in perfect health for a man his age. Your name, Dr. Reed, doesn't appear. Not once. So, let me rephrase. When did you begin overseeing his case? Reed was cornered. It was a private consultation, at his son-in-law's request. Mr. Ford was concerned. Mr. Ford was concerned. I see. And when was this private consultation? I visited him at his home several times. You visited him? Wright said, raising an eyebrow. At his home? House calls? How very old-fashioned. And when was the last time you saw him? Reed saw his opening. He took it. This morning. I went to his home this morning at Mr. Ford's request. He was deeply agitated. He was confused. He fled the house. He was yelling. It confirmed all my fears. So, you saw him this morning at his home? Wright asked. Yes, around 7 a.m. That's remarkable, Wright said, his voice full of fake admiration. Truly incredible. Because at 7 a.m., Dr. Reed, Mr. Shaw was sitting in my office, in my presence, perfectly calm, drinking coffee and preparing for this very hearing. So, I ask you again, Doctor, who exactly did you see this morning? The blood drained from Reed's face. He was caught in a direct, verifiable lie. I must have mistaken the time. It was yesterday. Let's move on, Wright said, waving a dismissive hand. Let's talk about your finances. Doctor, you mentioned you were concerned about Mr. Shaw's. Are you concerned about your own? Jennings, Ryan's lawyer, jumped to his feet. Objection. Relevance, Your Honor. It is entirely relevant, Your Honor. Wright boomed. It speaks directly to this witness's motive and credibility. Overruled, the judge snapped. Answer the question. Dr. Reed was pale. I don't see what my personal finances dash, don't you? Wright walked to a legal easel and placed a large document on it. It was a bank statement. Do you recognize this account, Doctor? It's an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Your name? That's private. Not anymore, Wright said. Now, let's look at this. A payment, and another, and another. Bi-weekly payments coming from a shell corporation called RF Imports. Are you familiar with RF Imports? Dr. Reed said nothing. He was just sweating. Let me help you, Wright continued. RF Imports is a shell company owned by Mr. Ryan Ford, your patient's son-in-law. Wright flipped the page to a summary sheet. For 6 months, Dr. Reed, you have been receiving payments from Mr. Ford into this offshore account. The total, as of last week, is $310,000. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Ryan looked like he was going to vomit. So, Doctor, Wright's voice dropped to a quiet, lethal growl. I have 2 questions for you. First, is $300,000 your standard fee for treating senile paranoia? Reed just shook his head mute. Second, Wright said, moving closer. My investigator found that this account is directly linked to several online sports betting sites. Is it true, Dr. Reed, that you are over $300,000 in debt to Mr. Ryan Ford's personal bookie? Reed broke. It wasn't a slow crumble. It was a complete, shattering implosion. He let out a strangled sob. He owned me, he shrieked, the words tearing out of him. He owned my debt. He said he'd ruin me. He said he'd report me to the medical board. He told me the old man was already confused. He said it would be easy. He was sobbing now, a pathetic, broken man. He said he just needed a medical opinion to protect his family. He gave me the vial. He told me what to say. It was all him. He planned it all. He forced me. He collapsed forward, burying his face in his hands, his whole body shaking. The judge stared, aghast. The stenographer's fingers were flying. Ryan's lawyer, Jennings, slowly sat down, his case, his career, evaporating before his eyes. And Ryan just sat there, frozen, his mask of sanity completely gone, his eyes wide and empty. He had lost, and he knew it. Sound of chaos, shouting, a gavel banging repeatedly. Dr. Reed's confession hung in the air, thick and toxic. The man was sobbing on the witness stand, a grotesque puddle of a human being. But Ryan Ford wasn't finished. He wasn't going to go down that easily. He leaped from his chair, his face a mask of purple, twisted rage. He pointed a shaking finger. Not at Reed, but at me. He's lying. Ryan shrieked, his voice cracking. The doctor is lying. He's in on it with him. My father-in-law is the crazy one. He poisoned his own daughter. That's what happened. He attacked Emily at the restaurant. He's senile. He's violent. Arrest him. He was unraveling. It was a desperate, chaotic attempt to throw mud in every direction, hoping some of it would stick. His own lawyer, Jennings, just sat there, his head in his hands, having completely given up. The courtroom was in chaos. The bailiff was shouting for order. Judge Anderson slammed his gavel, the sharp crack cutting through the noise. Silence. Silence in this courtroom. The room settled. The judge looked at the sobbing wreck of Dr. Reed. He looked at the screaming, frantic Ryan Ford. And then he looked at me. I was the only one in the room who was perfectly calm. I was just sitting there, my hands folded on the table. Mr. Shaw, Judge Anderson said, his voice low and heavy. You have sat here and listened to some extraordinary accusations. The petition before me says you are incompetent. The witness says he was paid to lie about it, and your son-in-law now accuses you of attempting to murder your own daughter. Do you have anything you would like to say? This was it. Mr. Wright placed a reassuring hand on my arm. I stood up slowly. I buttoned my suit jacket. I turned not just to the judge, but to the small, stunned audience. Yes, Your Honor. I do. My voice was calm. It was the voice of a CEO, not a victim. The truth, I said, is always simpler than the lies. And the truth is this. I looked at Ryan. His eyes were wide, burning with hate. My daughter, Emily, did try to drug me last night. That is true. She poured a powder into my wine glass. A powder that Dr. Reed here, I nodded at the sobbing doctor, so kindly provided. A drug designed to make me appear confused, paranoid, and senile. I paused, letting the room absorb it. But she made a mistake. She drank the wrong glass. A collective gasp went up from the gallery. Judge Anderson's eyes widened. That, I continued, is the what. But the why is so much more interesting, and it has everything to do with my son-in-law. I turned my full attention to Ryan. Your Honor, my son-in-law, Ryan Ford, orchestrated this entire thing, but his motives were misunderstood, even by me, until 6 o'clock this morning. I saw a flicker of new fear in Ryan's eyes. The fear of the unknown. He didn't do this just to get his hands on my $60 million. He did it because he was desperate. I let the word hang in the air. You see, for the last year, Mr. Ford has been asking me strange questions about my company. Not about profits, not about stock options. About logistics. About my shipping containers. The ones we use to ship highly controlled biological compounds all over the world. Ryan's face went from white to a sickly, greenish gray. He knew where I was going. I thought he was just curious, I said. But he wasn't. He was using me. He was using my company's clean, federally approved shipping lanes to smuggle his own illegal goods into this country. Ryan's lawyer, Jennings, who had been defeated, suddenly looked up, his face a mask of pure terror. He clearly had no idea. My $60 million deal wasn't his goal, Your Honor. It was his problem. It was his death sentence. I looked back at the judge, who was leaning forward, hanging on every word. Because the moment I signed that sale, it triggered a mandatory top-to-bottom federal audit of every asset, every bank account, and every single shipping manifest for the last 5 years. An audit that would begin next week. I turned back to Ryan. He was shaking his head, whispering no, no, no. Ryan knew he was finished, I said, my voice resonating in the dead, silent room. He knew the audit would expose him. He knew the FBI would be at his door. So he put his contingency plan into action. He couldn't stop the audit, but he could run from it. His plan was simple: drug his confused old father-in-law, have his paid-off doctor declare me senile, have his puppet, my daughter, help him petition the court for an emergency conservatorship. And once he had legal control of my $60 million, he was going to disappear. He was going to take my life's work and flee the country, leaving my daughter to take the fall for everything. That was when Ryan snapped. It wasn't a word. It was a roar. A primal scream of pure, cornered rage. You old bastard. He vaulted over the defense table, his suit jacket flying, his face purple, his hands clawed, aiming for my throat. He was fast, but he wasn't fast enough. Before he had even cleared the table, 2 men in the back row stood up. They weren't bailiffs. They were tall, fit, and wearing suits that didn't come from a department store. They moved with a speed that was terrifying. They intercepted Ryan in midair, tackling him to the ground in a tangle of limbs and expensive wool. He hit the floor with a sickening thud. No, let me go. I'll kill him. I'll kill you, he screamed, his spittle flying. One of the men was already yanking Ryan's arms behind his back, the click-click-click of handcuffs echoing in the courtroom. The other man stood up, brushing off his jacket, and held up a badge to the stunned judge. Special Agent Davies, FBI, he said calmly, as if he did this every day. Mr. Wright contacted our office at 6:30 this morning. We were here to observe the testimony regarding the federal audit. He nodded to his partner, who was hauling a screaming, thrashing Ryan to his feet. Ryan Ford, Agent Davies said, his voice booming. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, interstate smuggling, and bribery of a medical official. You have the right to remain silent. I just stood there, watching. I looked at Dr. Reed sobbing on the stand. I looked at Ryan, my son-in-law, a ruined, screaming animal being dragged out of the courtroom. I looked at Mr. Wright, who was calmly packing his briefcase. The war was over. And I had won. Sound of fading sirens, hospital ambience. The courtroom dissolved into chaos. Judge Anderson was pounding his gavel, but the noise of the FBI agents subduing Ryan and Dr. Reed wailing on the witness stand drowned him out. The bailiff finally announced the hearing was suspended indefinitely. Ryan and Reed were both taken out in handcuffs. I watched them go, my son-in-law's eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. He was no longer hiding. The monster was finally on full display. Wright clapped me on the shoulder. It's done, Peter. No, I said, my voice heavy. Not yet. There's one last thing. I didn't wait for him. I walked out of the courthouse, past the stunned reporters who were already shouting my name, and got into the back of my car. I told my driver to take me to St. Jude's Hospital. The emergency room chaos had subsided. Now Emily was in a private room on the 4th floor, the psychiatric ward. A bored-looking police officer sat outside her door. He recognized me from the news, which was already exploding on every TV in the lobby, and he nodded, letting me pass. I pushed the door open. She was sitting up in the hospital bed, bathed in the harsh afternoon light. The 4 was still taped to her arm. Her face was pale and blotchy, her hair a tangled mess. She wasn't my bright, vibrant Emily. She was a hollowed-out shell. The television in the corner of her room was on, the volume low. A local news anchor was speaking urgently. Being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. Ryan Ford, son-in-law of billionaire philanthropist Peter Shaw, has been arrested on federal smuggling and fraud charges. They were showing the footage. The video of Ryan tackling me, of the FBI agents taking him down. Emily was watching, her whole body shaking, silent tears streaming down her face, creating dark, wet patches on the thin hospital gown. She looked up as I entered. Her eyes were wide, not with guilt, but with the terror of being caught. "Dad," she whispered, her voice a broken croak. "Dad, what? What happened?" I just woke up. I saw this on the news." "Ryan, what did they do to him?" She was lying. Even now, after everything, her first instinct was to lie, to play the victim, to pretend she was just a confused, innocent bystander in the wreckage of the life she had helped destroy. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I felt nothing but a profound, bone-deep tiredness. The rage was gone, burned away in the courtroom. All that was left was the ash. I walked to the window and stood looking down at the city traffic. "They arrested him, Emily," I said, my voice flat. But why?" she sobbed, clutching the thin hospital blanket. "Smuggling? Fraud? I don't understand. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was doing any of that. I just thought." I turned to look at her. Her beautiful face, so much like her mother's, was twisted into a mask of deceit. And for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as my daughter, but as his accomplice. "You knew, Emily," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her fake sobs like a razor. She stopped crying, her breath hitching. "What?" "You knew," I repeated, walking closer to the bed. "You didn't know about the smuggling. I'll give you that. He was probably smart enough to keep you out of that part. But you knew about the rest." "No, Dad." You knew you were going to drug me," I said, my voice unyielding. "You knew you were going to a hearing this morning to have me declared insane. You knew Dr. Reed was a fraud. You knew you were helping your husband steal $60 million from your father. You knew that." She stared at me, her eyes wide with panic. The lies were gone. Only the truth remained. "You chose him, Emily," I said, the weariness washing over me. "I spent 40 years building a life for us. For you. He spent 6 months whispering poison in your ear. And you chose him. You chose the money." It wasn't like that," she pleaded, the tears now real. He convinced me. He said you were losing it. He said you were going to lose the money. He said it was the only way to protect you." "And you believed him?" I asked. "You believed the man who couldn't hold a job over the father who gave you the world? You believed him so much that you were the one who held the vial. You were the one who poured it into my glass." She had no answer. She just crumpled, folding in on herself. Her sobs now the raw, ugly sound of true despair. The sound of a person who had lost everything. I stood there for a long time watching my daughter cry. I had won. I had protected my legacy. I had exposed the criminals. But I had lost my little girl. I had lost her years ago and just hadn't been willing to see it. "He's gone, Emily," I said finally, my voice void of emotion. "And the woman who tried to drug me, she's gone too. I don't know her anymore." Emily's breath hitched and her eyes, which had been dull, were now wide with a new kind of terror. The realization of what she had done and what it meant was finally crashing down on her. "Jail," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, Dad. Ryan, Dr. Reed, the conspiracy. I'll go to jail. I'll lose everything." She started to sob, the desperate, ugly cries of someone who had just lost their entire world. I watched her for a long, cold moment. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a finality. I was no longer her father. I was her new reality. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her sobs and stopped them instantly. She looked up at me, confused, her face a mess of tears and smudged mascara. "You're not going to jail, Emily." I walked over to the chair by her bed and sat down. I wasn't the broken old man anymore. I was the man who had just closed a $60 million deal, and I was now structuring my next one. "I am going to use my money," I said. "All of it. To fix this. I am going to hire the best legal team in the country. They will argue that you were a victim of coercion, that you were manipulated by your husband, that you suffered from a temporary mental break. They will keep you out of prison." I saw a small, pathetic flicker of hope light up in her eyes. "Dad, I am also," I continued, "going to pay for you to go to the best rehabilitation facility in the country. Not for drugs, Emily. For your character. You are going to spend months, maybe years, in therapy, learning about accountability, ethics, and the consequences of your actions." Her hope grew. She was seeing a way out. She was seeing the safety net. "Oh, Dad, thank you. I'll do anything." "But," I said. And that one word, that simple word, sucked all the air out of the room. Her smile froze. But, I repeated, leaning forward, the $60 million is now in a trust. My trust. I am the sole administrator. You will never see a single cent of it. You will not have an allowance. You will not have a credit card. You will not have a new car. The lawyers and the doctors will be paid directly by me. Her face fell. But what about Dash? You will not inherit anything, Emily. Not until you are a different person. Not until I decide you are. You will have nothing. You will be, for the first time in your life, truly poor. She stared at me, uncomprehending. But how? How will I live? How will I eat? I smiled. It was not a kind smile. Oh, you'll have a job. A job? Yes, you'll be working. You'll have a minimum wage job, and you will learn, perhaps for the first time, what it means to earn your own money. And your new boss? Well, I've already arranged it. I stood up. He'll be here to pick you up when you're discharged. Who? She whispered. Who is it? I just looked at her. I didn't need to answer. Sound of a gentle, hopeful melody begins to play quietly in the background. 6 months later, I was in my same old ranch house. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I was sitting in Laura's old armchair, reading a book. I was finally at peace. The doorbell rang. I opened it. It was Evan, the young waiter from L'Orangerie. He was no longer wearing a waiter's uniform. He was in a sharp, well-cut suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He was my new personal finance manager, and he was worth every penny of his 6-figure salary. Mr. Shaw, he said, stepping inside. He was all business, but his eyes were always kind. Evan, how are things? I asked, heading to the kitchen to pour us coffee. The markets are stable, he said, following me and opening his briefcase on my modest kitchen table. The foundation funding is secure, and I have the first report from the shelter. The shelter. The one I had funded with the first $5 million. A place for people who had nowhere else to go. And Emily? I asked. Evan looked down at his report. Emily Shaw Ford completed her first full work week. She's on the night shift. Her supervisor says she was compliant, but slow. Slow is fine, I said, as long as she's thorough. Oh, she was thorough, Evan said, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. She's assigned to sanitation for the first month. She cleaned every toilet in all 3 wings perfectly. I took a sip of my coffee. I looked out the kitchen window at the old oak tree Laura and I had planted together 40 years ago. The leaves were just beginning to turn gold. Good, I said, my voice quiet. That's good. I turned back to Evan. All right, son. Let's talk about the quarterly projections. I was finally, truly at peace. This story is a powerful lesson in how greed and entitlement can completely blind people to the truth. Emily and Ryan were so focused on the $60 million that they grossly underestimated the man who earned it. They saw a frail, forgetful father. Not the brilliant CEO who was always 10 steps ahead. It proves that true strength isn't about the luxury you display, but the silent, calculated resolve you possess. Ultimately, the story shows that actions have severe, life-altering consequences. And sometimes, the only path to redemption is by losing everything to learn the value of integrity. What would you have done in Peter's shoes? Was his final decision an act of justice, or was it a cold revenge? Tell me what you think, I really want to know. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.